Okay, hello everybody, my name is Dante. Today we are going to be going through all the different ways you can go about recording your kart racing when out on the track. We're going to talk about small cameras, bigger cameras. We are going to do a section about 360-degree cameras as well later on in the video. We're going to talk about the best way of mounting your camera to your helmet. We're going to talk about chin mounts, normal adhesive mounts, and we are going to touch on visor cameras as well. We're also going to talk about the different ways you can mount a helmet onto yourselves, not including the helmet. And we are also going to talk about mounting a camera onto a kart. Throughout the video there will be plenty of recommendations, stuff that I do, that I recommend from my experience from recording kart racing for the last 11 years, and also some just general tips to know about. Firstly, I just want to make it very clear that obviously there are so many different cameras that you can choose from these days. It is very important that you do get a camera that has stabilization as a feature, as part of the camera. So for example, you can see I've got a Hero 4 here. This camera is from 2015. This has no stabilization included, so the actual footage you get is quite bumpy. You have to remember when you're out there on the circuit, there's a lot of bumps. The camera has to deal with quite a lot. There's a lot of shakiness, so you want to eliminate that by getting a camera that does have stabilization as a feature. So I stopped using this camera a long time ago now because it just wasn't watchable. I also see way too many videos online of drivers posting footage which is very shaky or of poor quality, and if I'm perfectly honest, no one is going to watch that. So do yourself a favor and get yourself a decent camera with stabilization. Each camera will have its best settings, so it's always important that you actually research your camera online. Look for the best settings available for your camera. It's very important, especially with karting, I think, to have it on the widest perspective possible, the widest POV, so just make sure you do that in your settings, whichever camera that you have. So for this first method of recording your karting, I'm actually going to use my old helmet as an example here, a good old AGV Rossi helmet here. So the most basic way of recording your karting is by having an adhesive mount on the top of the helmet here. So you can see you can get two different type of GoPro mounts really. You can get one which is curved a little bit, and you've got one that sits quite flat. Now ones which are flat are better really for going on karts. But yeah, for your helmet you'll want to use a curved one because it follows the shape of the helmet a lot better. You can see I've already got one on here. It's quite strong. You can see that's never coming off. Getting the right angle is important for this sort of mount. You can see I've got it in the middle here. If you have it any closer, you may lose a little bit of your perspective. If you have it a little bit further back, then you're going to see too much of the helmet and probably less so of the track. So it's important you find a balance, and really you're only going to know where the best place is by knowing how you drive. Some drivers like to have their head facing down, some a little bit more upright, so you need to keep that in mind and place it in the right place to get the best angle for your videos. So you can see here, putting it on, very easy. Just slide it on the top, push down the GoPro locking plug if you have one, and it's on there and it's ready to go, and looking pretty good here. So yeah, you can see this is a good angle to have it on. If you're happy to put an adhesive mount on this sort of helmet. Now I obviously have a new helmet since this, and I wouldn't dream of putting an adhesive mount on that. You have to be wary, because to take these mounts off, first of all, if you care about the aesthetics of your helmet, how it looks, then plunking on a adhesive mount might not be the best thing to do. And also to get it off, I recommend you use a hairdryer on high heat. You have to keep it facing around the mount, around the glue, just so you can peel it off, and it takes a while, I have to be honest. It didn't damage this helmet, but I wouldn't trust doing it with my current helmet. For that reason, I wouldn't go using this method on a helmet that you care about. But of course, if you have a helmet that you don't mind putting an adhesive mount on, then do it. It gives you a great perspective for your racing. So yeah, I see a lot of drivers put a helmet mount on the side of the helmet. Now that can give you a good eye line if you like that, to get the right height in terms of what you're seeing. But you are going to miss a lot of what's going on the track because the helmet's going to block a lot of it. So if you're going to put an adhesive mount on, I definitely recommend the top. But moving on from that though, I do use a chin mount for my new helmet. This is the setup that I use. This is a Insta360 chin mount, Generation 1 chin mount. The Generation 2 chin mount, it sits a little bit lower with where the camera sits against the actual mount. So yeah, you have to bear in mind that getting hold of the Generation 1 chin mounts for Insta360 is a bit more difficult. I'd also bear in mind that, you know, even though this is an Insta360 chin mount, it is still all compatible with each other. You can see, well, I have actually had a GoPro on this one before as well, so there's no issues with that. I just think this chin mount's really good quality. It's also got a nice soft backing to it, so it does not scratch the helmet as well, which is important, especially for people like me who have a fancy one. Obviously, if you are a taller driver, then getting the newer generation mounts are okay, because it sits a bit lower. You can still see over the steering wheel, but for anyone who is smaller, like me, actually having it lower down means you only really see the steering wheel. You can't see what's ahead of you, and that doesn't really give you anything watchable, nothing that interesting really. Just important with the chin straps that you really do it up quite tight, otherwise it will move over time, it will move over the bumps, etc. You don't have to tighten the camera that tightly on these mounts. You know, it's fine for it to flex a little bit. You don't want to ever over tighten it for sure, no, definitely not. But yeah, this chin mount is basically attached via Velcro. It does a great job. Obviously with Insta360 not producing these chin mounts anymore. If you do want to have something similar to this, there are plenty of other sellers selling something similar to this, so that's definitely what I would do. Obviously, one thing to bear in mind with chin mounts is that it will obstruct a little bit of your vision, especially if you have it a little bit higher up like me. Obviously, I have no choice, otherwise you don't get a good angle of what's going on in front of you. Now, I kind of look around the chin mount. I look a little bit down and just looking to the sides, so it doesn't really affect me. But if you don't like having something in front of you like that, if you think it's going to put you off, then obviously I don't recommend that you get a chin mount. You would rather look to get something on the actual helmet itself, like an adhesive mount for example. If you do have a chin mount where it sits a little bit lower down, you can use little accessories to kind of lift it up a little bit. So just to raise it, give it a little bit more height, just a better chance to actually be able to see something like so, and then you'll just additionally screw it on like that. Also, another thing with chin mounts is that you can kind of feel the weight a little bit. Same with on top of the helmet, you can feel it kind of sitting there, but also in front of you it kind of just hangs the helmet down a little bit. You know, these cameras aren't very heavy, but the helmets aren't very heavy either, to be honest, so you can feel any additional weight. Again, it's just something to get used to. So another thing to consider with having a helmet mount is that a lot of tracks are no longer allowing helmet mounts. So it's important, especially if you're only looking to kind of record at one track, to find out what their rules are, what they allow. There's no point buying something for the sake of it and then realizing that you can't use it. But usually my go-to place to record any footage, if the track allows, is the chin mount. That would be the first priority. Otherwise, I would start looking at other options. So the hottest topic right now when it comes to recording your racing are visor cameras. Cambox is completely out of the picture. I believe they've even gone out of business. Their cameras have no stabilisation at all. So yeah, I don't think Cambox really produces good footage for you to watch back. So for that reason, they're out of the picture and we're gonna just focus on other cameras instead. And this is what I do. I use a DJI Osmo Nano. You can see the visor camera sitting here. Now I need to make it very clear that especially with some cameras which are a little bit bigger than others, they really do affect your vision, so you have to bear that in mind. But you can see with the camera installed here, so what we've actually done in the helmet is we have used 3M dual lock, low profile dual lock, so it's not very thick at all, and you can see that they do just kind of lock together very easily here, quite securely, and there's no issues. But we actually went one step further and actually had the low profile dual lock sewn into the actual helmet itself, so there's no way that the top bit would ever come off. Now you can get visor cameras which could sit in the corner of your helmet. I don't really like that perspective. You see a lot of the helmet, to be honest, and not a great view of the track. I also prefer to have footage from the middle of the helmet. I think it just looks better, looks more watchable, actually looks like you're the one driving the kart. Now different helmets will vary in terms of the amount of space you will have above your eyes, so for other helmets you might be completely fine to use bigger cameras. Now with the 3M dual lock, we actually put it on the case, not on the actual helmet, on the actual camera itself. The reason for that is because I don't want to be constantly applying and then taking off the dual lock on here, because obviously these are the connections for where you charge the camera. So at least if we have it on the case, we can just willy-nilly take it in, take it out, very easy. But yeah, big brands are really starting to make a lot of effort with their small cameras. Obviously the drawback is that they've got very short recording times. It's a case of recharging it. externally, so if you need to record for long periods of time. But they do charge really quickly, so if you're using it then coming off and using it again, they charge really fast, so that's really impressed me. But yeah, that's how I went about it inside my helmet with the dual lock. These connections down here are magnetic, so you could go down that route of having a magnet in your helmet as well and connecting it like that. I know that is what some people have done, actually use magnets or have a magnetic mount. That is a bit harder to do though, and also the second you start messing around with this section of the helmet here, you do risk it not being homologated or approved anymore, especially if you're doing owner kart driving, that sort of thing. So again, another thing to keep in mind. But overall, I think the DJI Osmo Nano is leagues ahead of any other small helmet camera right now, especially when it comes to video quality. But as I said earlier, there is the sacrifice with the vision, and I've spoken to a few people about it as well, and they all agreed that it really does impact what you can see. So if you're willing to sacrifice that for the content, then go for it, but just remember, you may not always be at your best. It does take some getting used to. It obstructs your vision way more than the chin mount does. You have to remember though that some places also don't allow visor cameras, Club 100 being one of those, of course. On the contrary, some places only allow visor cameras, so that includes places like Kart Silverstone, especially when it comes to actually having it on or in the helmet. That is all they allow, is the visor cameras as of right now of this video. Again, don't go investing so much money into stuff you can't actually use. Do your research, find out what tracks allow what, and from that research, buy what you need to. So if you did want to use your visor camera on the outside of your helmet, then you absolutely can. You can get these mounts, they're not always included. So for example, for the DJI Osmo, we've got this mount here, and obviously it's completely compatible with all GoPro mounts. So clip it on here, so yeah, there we go. Chuck it on a GoPro mount, or you can put it on a chin mount as well. Fully ready to go. But what I will say is, when it comes to the actual audio, it really does struggle outside of the helmet. The wind noise is very, very high. As much as the quality is unbelievable, small vlogging cameras are not really designed to be used at fast pace like that. Personally, if I was to go about using a visor camera on the outside, or small vlogging camera should I say, on the outside of the helmet, I'd probably look to have a Bluetooth microphone connected to it and have the actual microphone mounted inside of the helmet like that. There we go. And really, as I said, it just stops any sort of wind noise. It does mean it does pick up what you actually say quite easily, just like if the camera is in the actual helmet itself. So you need to kind of watch what you say a little bit. Having a microphone inside of your helmet can be good as well if you want to do live commentary things. I think it's quite good that you can kind of talk while driving. That's a good way of going about it. A lot of cameras are actually interchangeable. For example, the Insta360 camera is compatible with DJI's mics. I'm sure there's other cameras compatible with other brands' mics as well. So if that's something you wanted to do, then go for it. Even if you struggle with wind noise anyway, whether it's this sort of camera, another camera, you can always look at just mounting a microphone inside the actual helmet itself, and therefore you eliminate a lot of the issue. So an option, if we move away from helmet cameras now, on the helmet, in the helmet, whatever, we're going to move to mounts outside of the helmet. We've got chest mounts here. Yeah, I don't really recommend these. These chest mounts can sit quite low down, so you don't really get a good perspective whatsoever. You just get a great view of the steering wheel and nothing else. I'll actually go ahead and put this on. Oh, mate. Oh, yeah, I've definitely not got this on very well. Okay, so you can see we've got it on here like this. Again, maybe if you're a bit taller, then you can use these, but I would like you to kind of bear in mind that there are many places that don't allow chest mounts. So yeah, maybe stick to using it for hiking or something like that, but for karting, I do not recommend chest mounts. So another option instead of chest mounts is shoulder mounts. Now, there are a few places that do allow shoulder mounts. I think most places do allow shoulder mounts actually. Buckmore Park, for example, only allow visor cameras, shoulder mounts, or the camera on the actual kart itself. These can be a little bit awkward to actually put on. We'll try and put it on here. So I haven't done a marvellous job of putting this on, but you get the idea. Most of them sit on the left hand side. A big problem I found when I use shoulder mounts is my helmet constantly knocking the camera. You know, it sits very close to your head. You also see a lot of the helmet and yourself instead of the actual track. So in terms of actual perspective, you don't get to see a lot. I would rather run a camera on the actual kart itself over having it on the shoulder, definitely. I think this is a bit uncomfortable. You're not really too sure what it's doing. It can fall off. There's no point. So now we're going to move on to mounting your cameras actually on the kart. So a lot of places do this. Silverstone have got their own camera mounts. Buckmore have their camera mounts. Club 100, when they go across to all the different tracks, they also have camera mounts. And it's a good alternative to having it attached to your body or to your helmet. But there are a few things that you need to keep in mind. The mounts that you will find on the karts can vary. Obviously the most popular type of mount will be a standard GoPro mount. You can see the flat ones here. They'll either be bolted on or stuck on with adhesive. You can, however, also find certain karts or tracks have universal mounts on the karts, and sometimes when you have the camera actually on the mount, you can notice it shaking quite a bit. It does not sit flush on the mount. So here is what I recommend. When you are mounting your camera, whether it be an Insta360, a DJI, a GoPro, you must always use a GoPro mount. I really recommend you use the actual GoPro mounts. Don't go off buying unbranded stuff. The quality is never always good. The compatibility is not always good, and to be honest, you want a proper mount looking after your camera. I've seen so many cameras come off due to rubbish mounts. So always use the GoPro stuff. That's my recommendation there. If you didn't buy a GoPro and didn't get these mounts automatically, then you can buy little bundles online or grab bags, if you like, full of GoPro mounts. But still, even if you have the GoPro mounting brackets, you can still run into a bit of trouble with your camera coming off. We're going to explain how to minimize that chance. I've had over the time plenty of cameras come off the kart and needing to be recovered. I now never have that issue, and this is exactly how I go about it. So first of all, when actually having the camera on the mount, it's very important that you use a mount with this locking plug. Okay, it can also be called anti-vibration locking plug. There's a few things it can be called. Essentially, it's just a bit of rubber and it sits in like that. Without it, you can see here, very easy for the ends to squeeze in and then slide out the mount. We show you this in practice. So you've got that here. It's very easy for the ends to squeeze out, and that didn't take any effort at all to push that out. Whereas if we put the rubber in, now some mounts will be tougher than others to actually slide this down, but I promise you it will always go in. You just need to be quite aggressive with it, really need to force it. And here you are, it's in there now, and now there's absolutely no chance of that coming out. So really important, protect your cameras, especially if you are worried about it coming off. If it's an expensive camera, use the locking plug. That's so important. It will stop it from sliding out. There is actually no need to use a tether. If you have this down, it will never come out. If you're using one without a locking plug, then yes, you probably want to use a tether on that. A lot of karts actually come with tethers installed right next to it, so you can use them. But you have to be wary, especially if you're in a race situation or you're out on track. If your camera is dangling by the tether, that can result in a black flag, so you don't want to ruin your session because of that. I personally don't use the tether. I always just use the locking plug. That way I know I'm safe. Even if the camera shakes around a lot and it doesn't feel like it's actually sitting in flush in the mount, it will still stay there, I promise you that. Also on the karts, there is obviously a lot of shaking happening on the kart, a lot of vibration going through the kart, and that's why, as I go back to my earlier point, it's very important to have a camera that has the stabilization feature. It does a really good job. Usually you can choose from different levels, of course, so the higher the stabilization you choose, the less perspective you get, because it's doing a bigger job of trying to keep the image stable. Usually you find standard stabilization does enough, especially if you have it on your helmet. If you notice excessive shaking when on the kart still, then definitely bump it up to the highest level of stabilization that your camera offers. The only drawbacks when it comes to audio is that you can hear a lot of the rattling going on, so it does kind of ruin the sound a little bit. I've seen a lot of people try and get around this. One thing that people do is that they actually put black tape over the top of the mount here or down the front, either way, just to keep it stuck down to the kart a little bit better, and therefore it stops it from shaking around a bit more, and therefore you get a bit better sound. Obviously, when it comes to owner karting, you kind of have a little bit more flexibility, especially in test sessions, in terms of where you can mount it. You can mount it on the radiator, you can mount it on an engine mount, you can mount it wherever you deem feasible. On the side of the kart though is always quite cool because you get a much better perspective, and that's obviously if you don't want to run a camera on your helmet. If you are worried that your camera is actually going to come off, get it in a case. So you'll find that you can buy a case, a protective case for any camera. So slide it in like that, put it in like here. There you go, in a case, much better protected. So if it does come off when on track, much better chance of it actually staying in one piece. But the final tip that I'm going to give you when it comes to mounting your camera on a kart is actually down to how you screw it onto your mount. I've seen so many cameras being written off, destroyed, because of one simple thing, and that is just a case of people tighten this way too much. You tend to find hand tight is not really enough, and over time, especially with the bumps, the camera just looks down. So you can use a screwdriver to tighten it up, but I always recommend you just bring it back a little bit, just so it has a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of wiggle room there. Otherwise it will just sit way too tight on the mounting bracket and it will just shear off. Camera will go off, the mount will still be on the kart, but the camera will be nowhere to be seen, or actually destroyed. Otherwise, another good thing to do is take out insurance. A lot of the big brands actually offer insurance for accidental damage, especially when you buy them brand new. So that's always something worth considering. A replacement suddenly becomes a lot cheaper if your camera gets destroyed, so have a think about that. Now, as much as I don't have it in front of me here, 360-degree cameras. 360-degree cameras are increasing a lot in popularity, especially amongst content creators, but there are a few things to consider here. So you can have a 360-degree camera on your helmet, but you have to remember they are quite chunky, so whether you have it on the front or on the rear, you will certainly feel the weight of it a lot more. Also, if you're going to have a 360-degree camera on the front of your helmet, it is advisable you try and bring it a little bit further out from the helmet, so use the accessory that I showed you before. So this one here, bring it out just a little bit further back, otherwise there's no point running a 360-degree camera because you're not going to see anything behind you. So yeah, if you're going to have it on your helmet, then it's best to have it on the top. The 360-degree cameras though are very good for mounting on a kart, especially as you can see around the karts quite well. You can see what's going on behind you, you can see what you're doing, your steering inputs, your pedal inputs as well. So if you are looking to use a 360-degree camera to help your own driving, analyze your own driving to try and get better, and obviously it is very useful for being able to see all the different inputs that you are doing. You can mount it upright and you can mount it down as well if you use the right attachments. I was able to use a 360-degree camera recently to see what it was about. It was excellent the way that you could look around the kart. You could use keyframes to select which part of your video that you want your viewers to see at each time. You just have to be aware that when you are editing this sort of video, only certain apps can see it, and then you can further export it to your editing software. So if you don't mind spending the time to try and edit all of it and edit which part of the video you want to see, whether it's behind, in front, to the side, throughout your race or your session, then obviously get a 360-degree camera. But if you just want the perspective of what you see from your karting, then just run a normal camera. That way it becomes a little bit easier to edit. So when it comes to actual camera recommendations, these are all the cameras that I've ever owned. So we've got the Hero 4 that I don't use anymore. We've got the GoPro Hero 10, so a few generations old now, but still does a pretty good job. I especially don't mind putting this on a kart because it's a little bit of a cheaper camera compared to my current ones. But otherwise we do have the Insta360 Ace Pro 2 and the DJI Osmo Nano. So I still rotate between these three cameras for different purposes. Next on my list is to get my own 360 degree camera as well. So yeah, I have tried a lot of the different brands here. Back in the day when I first started recording, GoPro was the obvious choice. It was the most notable brand. Everyone knew GoPro. There wasn't as much noise at all about any other brands. But this current day, GoPro is not the obvious choice. In fact, in some cases there are brands doing bigger and better, and you would have noticed that I have stuck to the big brands in this video because I really do believe their quality is better than anything else on the market. Now I'll be very upfront with you right now. GoPros recently have been very poor for dark scenes, so whether that be indoor karting or nighttime racing, these cameras perform very poorly. The GoPros just don't seem to have it nailed down at all yet. Now apparently the latest GoPros that are going to be coming out quite soon, they're going to have larger sensors. So obviously this has got a small sensor, hence why it's taking no light at all. But maybe, just maybe, GoPro will finally get it right. But as of right now, and as of my experience, I'm not going with GoPro in terms of my go-to camera. For daytime, however, this is really good. GoPro colors are very natural. The actual quality of the GoPro footage is really good. But the second you need to use it for indoor, for any sort of dark scenes, this doesn't do the job. Insta360 and DJI do a much better job with dark scenes. I personally use the Ace Pro 2 and I don't see a lot of karters actually using this. There's a little bit of weight to it, but I think the quality is really good in daytime. It also has a pure video mode as well for nighttime, and it performs really well. DJI, now this is only their small camera. They obviously have their Action 5, their Action 6, which I have also used before, and they seem to be gaining a lot of traction. There's a lot of people using DJI cameras right now. The quality is good, its performance in nighttime is good. So yeah, you can't go wrong if you get one of the recent cameras from DJI. I am just a little bit surprised not as many people are using the Insta360 in karting, but there you go, that is my recommendation really. That's what I use. One thing to be aware of, which made me feel a little bit funny when I first learned about it, obviously with GoPro you have it mounted to an actual bracket using a screw. DJI and Insta360 love their magnetic mounts. Initially you feel like, how is this going to reliably keep it on? But it actually does a very good job. So yeah, that's not coming off. DJI as well, using a magnetic clip system here, never coming off. So just be aware, that's what big camera brands are doing these days, but they are still safe to use, and I wouldn't feel too worried about having them on my person. Now if you are looking for slightly cheaper cameras, then GoPros from the one after this, actually the GoPro Hero 5 Black onwards, did feature stabilisation, but I think the GoPro Hero 6 onwards started to actually have good stabilisation. I think the 5 Black was just a trial run. But if you are looking for cheaper cameras, then GoPros, especially older GoPros, there's plenty of them being sold on eBay. That is a good option if you just want to get something to start using. I'm actually surprised at how much they still sell for, in all honesty, but you can still get them at about a quarter of the price, a fifth of the price of a brand new action camera. To be honest, with every new generation that comes out, there's very small changes. So cameras from a few years ago still do an excellent job. With 360 degree cameras, it's very similar to kind of the small vlogging cameras. There are starting to be a lot more options now. All the big camera brands are doing their own. So you've got the GoPro Max 2, you've got the Insta360 X5, X4, you've also got the DJI Osmo 360, which I believe is their first attempt at a 360 degree camera. They all perform really well. The GoPro Max 2 still has terrible performance in dark scenes, so I'm kind of veering away from that. It's also quite a chunky camera. The Insta360 X5 and X4, they're quite tall cameras. You can get the Insta360 X4 Air, which is a little bit lighter and thinner, so that can be a good option. The actual camera footage they produce is very, very high quality. As I say, that DJI have made a new 360 degree camera, which is not overly too tall, not overly too depthy. I think overall it has the best balance. No matter what 360 degree camera I would get, I would definitely look to have a protective case on it. And finally, when it comes to post recording, so when you're editing your footage, when you're looking at posting your footage, it is absolutely pointless getting a good camera if you're going to set poor settings on the camera, poor quality settings. You're going to render your videos in poor settings. what's the point? You should be looking to use 4K if your camera offers it. You should be looking to use 60 frames per second to get your smooth footage. If you prefer your footage to have a more faster paced feel to it, then set it to 30 frames per second. So regardless of what you actually do with your camera, it is very important, whichever editing software you choose to use, if you choose to edit it, that you select good settings when you render, high quality settings, high bit rates, all of that stuff. And also a little tip from me when it comes to uploading onto YouTube: if you do record and upload your video in 1080p, it will actually be less good quality than if you recorded it in 1080p but actually rendered and uploaded the video in at least 1440p. This is because YouTube uses a different codec, so the second you start rendering it using quite high quality settings, 1440p and above, it actually uses a different codec, which means the quality is better on YouTube. So I would always look to minimum upload your footage in 1440p. So overall, I hope this helps with going about recording your kart racing, especially for those who enjoy content creation. Check out the description for my socials and for my website as well. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, everybody. Take care of yourselves and see you soon.